So today we're going to be solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So technically, any quadratic equation, you can find the values of x by using the quadratic formula for every quadratic equation. However, factoring and using the square root method, generally, once you get the hang of it, are faster than the quadratic formula. So you're going to need to memorize this formula. It is, you need to make sure that your equation that's given to you is in standard form first. And then what we're going to pull out of our equations is going to be our A value, the B value, and the C value. The A is always going to be the number in front of your squared variable. The B will be now in front of the variable that's not squared. And then the C value will always be the constant. Then you're going to plug it in. And you can either memorize this first negative B here as either negative B or the opposite of B. And then underneath, you're going to have, under the square root, you'll have B squared minus 4 times A times C. And then the whole thing is divided by 2 times A. So it's just a matter of pulling out A, B, and C and then plugging it into the formula. So here we go. Let's do some examples. Notice my first example is already in standard form. So all I need to do is pull out my A value, which is going to be this number in front of x squared. So this is my A value. It equals 1. My B value is the negative 4. I pull it out, even though it looks like it's a subtraction sign. Really what's there is a negative 4. And then my C value is the positive 2. So now I'm going to write the formula up above. So it's x equals opposite of B, or negative B, plus or minus B squared minus 4 times A times C. And that's all under the square root symbol. And then it's all divided by 2 times A. So now let's plug in our A, B, and C into the formula. Now, I think of this negative B here, I think of it as the opposite of B. So since my B value is negative 4, what I put when I fill it in is going to be positive 4. Really what went in here is a negative 4, and then that's why it turns into a positive 4. Or again, you can think of it as the opposite of B. Then plus or minus B squared, so B is negative 4. This time it's what it is, minus 4 times A times C, and that's all under the square root, divided by 2 times A. Now I'm going to come over here to the side so I have more room. So now I'm going to simplify what's under the square root first. Now, when I go ahead and multiply this part that's under the square root, I'm going to treat this as a negative 4. So it's negative 4 times 1 times 2. So I'm going to go ahead and put, if you want to treat it as a positive 4, just know your subtraction sign stays there. So 4 plus or minus negative 4 squared is 16. And then negative 4 times 1 times 2 is negative 8. Divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. I now need to subtract what's under the square root symbol. And 16 minus 8 is 8. Now, do not try to simplify anything yet. You need to break down the radical first. So I need to do my factor tree for the square root of 8 and put this into simplest radical form. Now, if you recognize that 4 is a perfect square, you could square root it right away. But I'm going to go ahead and keep breaking it down till it's prime. And now I have a pair of 2's, so a 2 comes out, and then the other 2 stays underneath. So now I have x is equal to 4 plus or minus 2 square root 2 over 2. Now I can simplify with that denominator. So I'm going to simplify. I can divide both of these numbers that are outside the square root by 2. Only way you can simplify with that denominator is if that 2 goes into both of the numbers. And it does. So I'm going to make this a 1 a 2, and a 1. So then now I'm left with x is equal to 2 plus or minus the square root of 2. On the quiz, you can leave your answer like this. You could also pull it apart. You can also do 2 plus square root 2 and 2 minus the square root of 2. So this is how I would expect your answer on the quiz to be. You can do either leave it with the plus minus or pull it apart. However, tonight in Big Ideas, they want you to take out your calculator and they want you to do on your calculator 2 plus the square root of 2. And when you do that, you're going to get a crazy long decimal, but you're going to round it to the tenths place and you get 3.4. Then if you do 2 minus the square root of 2, then you get 0.6. So this is how Big Ideas wants the answers tonight. Using your calculator, you're going to enter it as decimals rounded to the tenths place. However, for the quiz, we are not using a calculator, so you're going to leave it in simplest radical form. So for number 2, I'm going to pull out my A, B, and C value. So A is 1, B is -3, and C is -2. Now, if this were not in standard form, you would have to rearrange it first. But all of the examples in the notes today are already in standard form for you. So now that I have it in standard form, let's plug it into the formula. So again, opposite of B, or -3, becomes +3, plus or minus B squared, which is -3, minus 4 times A times C, all under the square root, divided by 2 times A. So now you have to follow order of operations. I'm going to simplify what's under the square root first. I'm going to square the -3. I'm going to now multiply -4 times 1 times -2, and I end up with +8. I'm going to multiply the 2 times 1. I now have to add 9 and 8, and I get 17. This question, the radical, the 17 cannot be broken down. So it's in simplest radical form. I can't simplify anything with the 2, so I'm leaving my answer a fraction. So on the quiz, you can leave your answer just like this. But for tonight, if you get a question like this, you need to pull it apart and do 3 plus the square root of 17, then divide that answer by 2. Once you do that, you're going to get 3.6. This is rounded to the tenths place. And then you also have to do 3 minus the square root of 17, divide by 2. And once you do that, you get -0.6. So for the quiz, you're either going to leave it like this. This is quiz. Or this. But for the homework tonight, they want you to round it to the tenths place. Number 3, this one could actually be solved using factoring. And factoring would be faster. However, I'm going to show you quadratic formula to show you that even a question that could be factored could be solved using the quadratic formula. So let me come in and bring this down. So I'm going to get my A value is 1, my B value is 2, and C is -48. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it into the formula. So again, opposite of B, so -2 plus or minus B squared minus 4 times A times C, all under the square root, and then divided by 2 times A. So now let me simplify what's under the square root. So the -2 plus or minus is there. I square the 2, and now I'm going to multiply these 3 together, and this gives me 192. And that's under the square root, divided by 2 times 1. I'm going to add what's underneath the square root. I get 196. I need to try to break it down. This is actually a perfect square. It's 14 times 14. So what you'll do is you're going to do x equals negative 2 plus or minus 14 divide by 2. Now I need to make my two problems. And this answer is the same on the quiz as it is in the homework tonight. So what you're going to do now is you're going to do x equals negative 2 plus 14 divide by 2 and negative 2 minus 14 divide by 2. Once you do this, you get 12 over 2, which gives you 6. And over here, negative 16 divide by 2, and that gives you negative 8. So your two answers are 6 and negative 8. Now, you could have factored this and it would have been a lot faster. So for example, if I took the original problem, x squared plus 2x minus 48 equals 0, factors of negative 48 that give me 2, that's going to be negative 6 and positive 8. So if you would have just factored it, then set each of the factors equal to 0, that's how you get the positive 6 and the negative 8. Same answer I got. Instead of using quadratic formula, I can also factor it. So again, you can use quadratic formula for every quadratic equation. But again, factoring, once you get the hang of it, is a lot faster. On the questions that cannot be factored, you have to use the quadratic formula. There's another technique called completing the square, but we're not going to do that here. You will do that next year multiple times. So let's do 2 more examples, and then that is it for the notes on quadratic formula. So this is the other method that we learned yesterday. Just to show you on this question, because it can be factored, it's faster. Now, on the quiz, I'm going to tell you which question you have to use quadratic formula because it can't be factored. And the reason why I'm telling you which one it is, so you don't waste time trying to factor it. So for number 4, it's in standard form. So let's pull out our A value, which is 3, our B, which is 11, and our C, which is 6. And now we're going to plug it in. Opposite of B plus or minus B squared minus 4 times A times C, all under the square root, divided by 2 times A. You need to memorize this for Friday. So let's fill it in. So again, the opposite of B was 11, so negative 11, then 11 squared minus 4AC, all under the radical, divided by 2 times A. This time our A is not 1, it's a 3. And we're just following PEMDAS, or order of operations. So negative 11, 11 squared is 121. And now when I go ahead and multiply these 3, I get negative 72. It's under the square root still. And then 2 times 3 is 6. I need to subtract. 121 minus 72 gives me 49. This is another one that you could have factored because 49 is a perfect square, 7 times 7. So I'm going to square root it, and I get negative 11 plus or minus 7 over 6. I got to make my two problems. So x equals negative 11 plus 7 divide by 6, and negative 11 minus 7 divide by 6. I'm going to go ahead and do the subtraction in the numerator. Negative 11 plus 7 is negative 4 over 6. This will simplify to negative 2/3. The other one, negative 11 minus 7 is negative 18 divided by 6. And then negative 18 divided by 6 is negative 3. So your two solutions are negative 2/3 and negative 3. This would be the same answer you would give on the quiz as on the homework tonight. And again, this would have been a question where you could have factored. You wouldn't have had to do the quadratic formula on the quiz. Try number 5, last example. So again, let's pull out our A, B, and C values. So my A is 1, my B is 14, and my C is 36. And I'm going to plug it in to this formula. So opposite of B, plus or minus B squared minus 4 times A times C, all under the square root, divided by 2 times A. I'm going to go ahead and simplify what's under the square root. 14 squared is 196. And then when I multiply the negative 4 times 1 times 36, that's 144, negative. So negative 144, still under the radical. And now I'm going to subtract 196 minus 144 gives me 52. Do not try to simplify the 14 and the 2 yet. You need to break down the 52 first. So factor tree. This is 4 times 13. You could have also done 2 times 26, but then keep breaking it down. So then 2 and 2. 13 actually can't be broken down any further, so just bring it down. I got a pair of 2's. A 2 comes out. 13 didn't have a pair. It stays underneath. So x equals negative 14 plus or minus 2 square root 13 over 2. And now I got to simplify. So I can divide all these by 2. And now in simplest radical form, it's negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 13. This could be how you would leave your answer on the quiz. But for tonight, you have to do negative 7 plus square root 13. Get that decimal. It's negative 3.4. And then do negative 7 minus the square root of 13. And that's negative 10.6. So for the quiz, you would pick one of these. But for the homework, this is the answer. You can do either or. So if you're going to split it apart without the plus minus, then you would have to give me this and this. But if you leave it with the plus minus, you can just write it like that. Yes?